All right, welcome everybody to April 2022 TLN. We're talking culture again this month. Our featured facilitator is going to be Shawn Lacagnina. See that? I've been practicing. Yeah. So the rules of the road here are everyone gets involved. We're here to have a conversation about a particular topic and learn from each other and help each other grow in this space. That's what the Mastermind is all about. You will find that there are a few coaches across Texas that are here to help facilitate the Mastermind meeting. And then we've been inviting people in to the group so that we can diversify the conversation that we're having here. So we're so excited to have Kristen and Camila and Karen and Greg and Kathy and Pat on with us today. So without further ado, I would like to bring on our featured facilitator today. Shawn, it is all yours, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen here. You can see this?
Got it.
Good. Fantastic. So we're going to pick up in the last, for those of you that haven't been joining us for the last couple months, we've really been talking about this concept of culture and how we build up our organizations and what things are important to employees and a whole myriad of things that everyone is talking about now. And it's a conversation that good, bad, or otherwise really has not gone away. So yeah, companies and culture, so what now? So it's all around this idea of this great resignation that we keep hearing about. And I love what Zig Ziglar's son, Tom Ziglar, says. He calls it the great reimagination, because I really do think that puts more of a focus on what's happening. It's not so much people resigning, although that's obviously what's happening. But there's really this idea of employees of the workforce, at least in the States, reimagining, and now I understand it's starting to spread through other parts of the world, reimagining what they want their life, their career, their work balance to be. What does that look like for them? A recent survey claims that almost half of employees are looking for a new job. Now, that's pretty startling if you think about it, that half of the people are looking for a job and 44% of them consider themselves to be active job seekers. So they're actively looking to get out of where they are. Just in January, we saw 4.3 million people quit their leader. And I say quit their leader because, as we know, people don't necessarily quit a job. They don't quit a company. They quit the culture that the leader has implemented inside of where they're at. So they quit their manager. They quit their leader. They quit their boss. And in January, that was a record. February almost bumped it. We haven't gotten Marches yet. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. So let me give you some more startling statistics to think about. 80% of those people that resigned got an offer from their current employer. So they received an offer. 53% have reported that when they left, they took a salary decrease at their new place of employment. So this was not a money issue. 80% got a counteroffer to stay and still chose to leave for less money. The average was about $8,000 per year. So we're not talking about an insignificant amount of money. 56% quit without a job lined up. So it was so bad. They had so decided that they wanted a different type of life that they left not knowing where they were going. And the number one reason stated across the board was to escape a toxic culture. So again, people don't quit a job. They don't quit a company. They quit the culture that the leader has implemented inside of where they are. I love this quote by Richard Branson that train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I really think that's going to be the banner cry that you're going to hear across our culture as we continue to progress through this time period. So I want to introduce this thing called Price's Law. You may or may not have heard about it. I think it's a startling deal, and it really adds to the conversation that we're having. So if we consider everything that's going on and we add this on top of it, it really can startle and really, I think, spur the conversation even further. And this is what Price's Law states, that 50% of the work is done by the square root of the total number of people who participate in the work. So it could be a project, it could be an entire company, really. And this is especially true where any type of creativity is involved. What do I mean by that? If it's an assembly line work, doesn't as much apply, right? I'm putting screws on a deal or I'm dropping up whatever my little role is, it doesn't as much apply there. But if I have to give any thought to what I'm doing, that's the creative part. So it's not, hey, I'm a great musician or an artist, but creativity in thinking of solving a problem, creativity in how I'm going to address the client, anything that's involved in that area, it seems like Price's Law starts to materialize. To put some more emphasis on what we're talking about, if there's 4 people working on a project, that means 2 do 50% of the work. If there's 9 people working on a project, that means 3 do 50% of the work. That's manageable, and I think everyone would go, yeah, okay, I can see that. Well, what about when there's 100 people? Only 10 do 50% of the work. Now I'm really going to blow your mind. 10,000 people work on a project, only 100 do 50% of the work. So if you start to think about these great companies that we've all admired that have fallen, and oftentimes we say, how could that happen? For instance, a GE, that by all standards, when I was in college and coming through the business ranks, GE that was it, man. Look at how they do things. And now if you look at them, they're trying to stay afloat. Price's Law really starts to work into that. The sad part is we may know who the 2 people are and we may know who the 3 people are. Do we know who the 10 people are when it's at 100? Do we know who the 100 are when it's 10,000? And if we have this great reimagination going on and people wanting to look for another opportunity, that 100 becomes very, very important. If we don't recognize who they are, and they're probably the ones that have an opportunity somewhere, we could see how, again, a GE could greatly be affected very, very quickly. And maybe you survive the first wave, the first 100 leave, and hopefully some more people step up, but probably not to the same effectiveness. Then what happens the next time? So if you think about it this way, as a company scales or begins to grow, as an organization is moving and making things happen, their incompetency is exponential, while the people that are competent inside the organization is much more linear. Again, 100 out of 10,000. So you can see the faster you grow, the longer you grow, the quicker you grow, it's going in a different direction. And do we recognize that and understand what needs to happen? So then to add to that, one other concept I wanted to bring to you, and let me say one other thing about the Price's Law. This has been looked at across a lot of different industries, organizations, different topics inside of our world. For instance, in music, if you just look at classical music, so taking a segment of music, there are 5 composers that make up 50% of what we know as classical music. That's startling in and of itself for me. And it's the ones, Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, right? So 5 people make up 50% of that music. Only 5% of everything that those 5 composers have done is what we know as classical music. That's amazing. So then we have this thing called shoves and tugs. Every leader has to understand what their shoves and tugs are inside of their industry. And I think every company has these. I don't think most leaders recognize it or they ignore it, but we have them. So what are shoves? Shoves are those things you think about, right? They're the things that make you not want to come back, not want to give 100%. It drains your energy. It makes you unhappy when you're spending that 8, 9, 10 hours a day at work. Tugs are just the opposite. These are the things that energize you, that make you proud to be there. It could be client successes. It could be the commissions that you're earning. It could be the culture that's around. It's probably a combination of all of that, but it makes you want to be part of what you're a part of. You're energized in the morning when you go there. It's not, oh no, another day. And recent surveys show that only 6% of people, 6%, say that their organization, when good suggestions or valid complaints, so we got gain and pain, right? But when good suggestions or valid complaints from employees, that it always leads to important changes. Only 6%. So basically they're saying, hey, when we bring up something, 6% of the time they listen. But when they do lead to important changes, they are 18 times more likely to recommend their place of employment as a great place to work. So when you look and see how hard is it to get these best places to work that everybody wants to achieve, man, this is a great indicator of that. Leaders just simply are not listening to their employees. And I could never give a presentation without mentioning Zig Ziglar. I'm sorry. He was my mentor. I love him. And I think this quote is amazing. The only thing worse than training an employee and losing them is to not train them and keep them. And I see Cortland smiling. Here's one of probably the biggest employer on the screen. You can relate. So with all of that said, and that's the presentation, I'd really like to have the conversation around, so now what? If we understand Price's Law, if we understand the shoves and tugs and we see what's happening with the Great Resignation, what do we as coaches recommend to our clients? As entrepreneurs and managers, what do we do to embolden our company? How do we not only protect and retain our top performers, but if we want to scale and grow, how do we create a culture good enough that attracts those top performers to join our organization? Any ideas?
I'll ask it in the form of a question, Shawn. Then maybe this will prime some of the others to jump in. So this applies to large organizations, right? It applies to medium organizations. It applies to really any organization, obviously, if you've got employees. What about the solopreneur? How does this apply to the solopreneur? And I'll offer my opinion if you want, or I'll just turn it over to you. But
no, let's hear it.
Okay, so the solopreneur, you may not have employees, but you do have suppliers, you have providers, you have your networking teams, you have the people that you interact with every day. And so as a solopreneur, this idea of shoves and tugs, the idea of Price's Law, right? The idea of building a culture that's positive. As a solopreneur, I feel like it's just as important to build a culture, understand the culture, live the culture, communicate the culture, and attract the people that are aligned with your culture. Because just as a shove may happen to an employee, it happens to your suppliers, it happens to your customers, right? The same with the tugs. So, we do have solopreneurs, and a lot of us work with solopreneurs and may even be solopreneurs on our own. But this concept doesn't just apply to like GE, Disney scale type business or small to medium. It's not just the franchise, the McDonald's. This concept, this idea, this law, I think applies to solopreneurs just as well. Maybe not in the context of a direct employee, but that sphere of influence and the people that you work with and the people you want to buy from you every day. Like this culture, you got to be tugging those people in. Yeah. Otherwise, there's plenty, you could swing a shovel. You swing a shovel in a crowded room, from a coaching perspective, you're going to hit someone calling themselves a coach right in the square dead between the eyes, because we're all over the place. But how are you helping? What culture you're creating? What culture are you subscribing to, and how are you cascading that through your business and translating it or communicating it in everything you do every day?
I think you're 100% right. And if I, I've been a small business owner, but if I had a business now with employees, and when I really look at something like Price's Law, where, as small as I want to be, it's even more critical, right? Because it's really half my workforce could be, a couple people leave and I could be really right back to where I started. But you're right, as a solopreneur, we all have cultures. We all create a culture for what we want to attract. And when we're talking to our clients, when we're networking, when we're doing all of those things, that's what either, right, pulls them, tugs them, or shoves them away from us, because they want to be a part of that. And as we scale, or at any point, even adding an assistant at some point, virtual or not, that's an extension of your culture. And they are going to pick up on what you're laying down, right? This is what I expect. These are the expectations my client has. This is what I want to happen for my organization. This is my, use another word, brand. This is my brand. How are you going to carry that forward? So I think it's important. I think you're dead on, Dennis. It goes, it does not matter the size. The principles are the same. The concepts are the same. And I think they have equal, if not more importance. Although it's hard to decide when you have 10,000, only 100. Wow. you know, and to me, the first thing I was, wow, how many leaders really know who that 100 is? Do they even know who 50 of them are? And I bet if you really, if there was a way to do it to where they, you could identify the 100 and then have the leaders tell you who they are, it'd be great to see how close it even comes to matching up. I think we've all been part of organizations at some point in our life where we said, the guy that's getting all the kudos and awards, et cetera. And you're like, oh my gosh, really? They don't fulfill that role. And what does that do to everybody else in the culture? So I think you're dead on.
Yeah, so Shawn, this is a great topic because it dovetails with some things that I will typically share when I'm working with clients around the level of employee engagement. And we know that it's at an all-time low. But if you think about it, if you think like that at 100 out of the 10,000, that factoid supports the level of the poor engagement. If 100 people, so if 100 people are doing the 50% of the work, they're getting probably the as you just said, the lion's share of the recognition, the accolades, the superior bonuses, better treatment, and so on and so forth. And so, if you could just if we could move the measurement stick just a little bit, and get a handful more points of engagement, man, we'd have a dramatically better, work situations. And so, when I was leading a CEO roundtable just yesterday, and this came up. They're talking about, they're having retention issues and a variety of other things. But, the thing that we sort of settled in on is, how different would your environment be if you consciously chose to become the employer of choice in your industry, neighborhood, so on and so forth? And it just spun up a number of different ideas and suggestions about what they can do in their unique environments to, to your point, create a better culture where people were, and a couple of people had some examples where people were literally standing outside their door trying to, get an interview or become part of that because the word got out that the culture was supportive of, rank and file or their typical employees. So again, very, very powerful stuff.
I think you're dead on, right? I mean, I was part of an organization that wanted to win best places to work. And so they diligently tried to check boxes to implement things to make that happen, but it never came close. And the second year, I can remember the disdain, and there's no other way of putting it, of the leadership of looking at their employees, and there were about 60 of us. How could you not say this is the best place to work? Well, if that's your rhetorical reply to what your employees are telling you, then all of this that we just talked about makes perfect sense. Right. And eventually those people, especially in that, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. Right. I find it hard to believe that of the 4.2 million a month, 4 million a month has been going on for 8 months now, 9 months, that no one raised a hand where they are and said, could we change this? This is a problem. And somebody else said, yeah. And probably what happens, they got slapped down. Well, there's a time where you're going to take it and you're going to, for whatever reasons, you're going to maintain your position and maintain your job and just do what it takes, which is a whole nother level of not productivity, right? There's a big difference between knocking it out of the park and doing enough to keep your job. We talked about that a little bit last month. And then at some point you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think that's one of the things the pandemic showed us with, lifestyle forcibly being changed on everybody. When they look back, they're like, gosh, I really missed X. I didn't get to do X. And now I've been doing that. I don't want to, especially for that culture. No, not doing that. So I think you're right, Austin. It's definitely that.
And just to piggyback on what you just said, what we see is a lot of leaders, they're throwing money at the problem, raises, maybe a few more benefits, but it goes back to what you said in your slide deck. It's a toxic leadership environment. you can't throw money at that unless you're trying to help and trying to remove the toxicity, which usually means removing some number of the people. So yeah, money is part of the solution, but it's a very, very, very small part. And you proved it, right? How many of these people are leaving and taking 10%, $8,000 pay cuts? I mean, so you proved it. Money is not the issue. We've self-actualized, and we want to be in spots where we can feel good about not just ourselves, but our surrounding environment.
And that's not a new I remember when I owned my first business, I would see these reports come out, right? And they would have the top 10 reasons people either choose or leave a company, and money was rarely in the top 10, never in the top 5. And I would immediately dismiss it. I would say, oh, come on. That's a bunch of junk. Why do you work? You work for money. I was a straight commission guy though, right? My whole life. Now, having lived under an organization where we weren't appreciated and all of those things, it was a toxic culture. Man, it makes perfect 100% sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, going back as far as I can remember, it's been the case. I think now what the pandemic has done is crystallized in everybody's view what that really looks like and what it means. You're right. Money is not, well, I mean, 8,000, we don't know. I would love to know what percent is that of their salary. Is that 10%, 5%, 50%? I mean, who knows? I think it would be all across the board with 4 million a month leaving. It's not an insignificant number though. We're not talking about pennies on the dollar. That's a significant amount of money.
Correct.
All right, Kristen, I know you'll forgive me for calling you out, but I see you're nodding your head a lot, and it makes me think about how you and I met, right? Because so as a solopreneur, you have created this culture around you with a women's group, right? This women's business group that meets. And that's how you and I connected, was through a mutual connection in that space. So as a solopreneur, creating this culture around your business and the people that you like to do business with, I think is important as well. True?
Absolutely. And it's just kind of like Dennis had said too, and I think Shawn touched on is, yes, I don't have employees. I did have an intern, and she was getting ready to leave because she had finished school, and I kept her by paying her, and she stayed, and she was so sorry to have to leave when, that term ended. But it was something that I outsourced anyway, and I didn't want to do anymore. So I got rid of those clients when she left, because I was like, I'm done with this. But kind of going back to like what you just stated is like, I don't have employees. So how can I create that, that circle of influence of those people, is to be that person that people want to be around. And just like Dennis mentioned at the beginning too, it's like, being referral partners. So you may not be my employee, but we're referral partners. And so hopefully passing business back and forth, that's the community, that the circle that I want to, be a part of. And kind of just like what, Shawn's saying, but for me, it becomes not just, my clients, I want them to stay, referral partners, I want them to continue to refer, and vice versa, but I don't have employees. So that's how I extend what you're stating, Shawn, is in a different sense for me. So.
And I think you're right. We everything that we do, that's your brand, right? The people that you surround yourself with, and we've all heard it, right? Pick the 6, 7, 10, depends on the book that you read, but people that surround yourself with, that's what you become. Well, it's no different in our business, or as an individual trying to make a business work. If Trish is my referral partner, I want to be proud of that. I don't want people going, he works with her. I mean, it's a reflection, right? We're all a reflection of each other, just because we interact and we trust each other and we hold each other accountable, et cetera. It's the same thing moving out as a business. It's almost like our review. So if we can't find a review online, we look at the people that are around, the businesses they're around. How did I meet them? I mean, how often have you been referred somebody, but you didn't trust the person that referred them? And what'd you do? You immediately say, I'm not calling that number. I mean, we've all done that, right? It's just, hey, Shawn, try this product. That's coming from them? No way. Hey, happening. We do the same thing, right? So it's the culture, the brand, the aura that we surround ourselves with, the people we interact, the people we call our friends, the people that we trust, the clients we choose to work with. As a business coach, if my client's not reputable, that could come back on me, right? If they found out they're dealing with Johnny, who's known to be a swindler, and they find out Shawn's his coach. Not calling him. It's important. And we don't give enough thought to that. We really don't. Forget being inside a company, not knowing who those people are, but even outside, we get very myopic sometimes about what our part of that relationship is. And I'm a person that really believes, and always have, that everything matters. I'll never know how many clients I lost because of an association with someone that didn't hold up their end. And none of us will. All right. They meet on the golf course and they find out, and then all of a sudden they're not returned. They're ghosts, to use a term that's real popular right now. It may not be anything we did, but they found out through association something, and we weren't able to defend it because it never came up to us. But they walk away or they go somewhere else. Great point. Thank you for saying that, Kristen.
Shawn, I was just going to echo what Kristen talked about. I worked with a client that's a solopreneur, and the same thing Kristen was talking about, really walking through the personal values into the business culture. And he doesn't have any employees, but he's got contractors. So he literally was transparent with that personal brand, if you will, as well as his business culture, and shared that openly and transparently with his contractors. And he said the chaos of constantly being called, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Went away. And he called them back and said, are you guys okay? I mean, what's going on here? You're not calling me asking for decisions. And they said, no, we understand the expectation you have. We understand your brand. We understand your culture. We can handle it now. We've got you. We represent you in the field. And he was blown away by the fact that he had never done that, or never established that transparency of his personal values translated into his business culture. And it just worked miraculously in terms of productivity, in terms of buy-in. His contractors are literally an extension of him, and now they feel that way.
And it's amazing, just that clarity, and take it inside an organization, but just that clarity of, we understand what the bar is. We understand what the vision is. We understand what's expected. I mean, I think that's a fantastic story, and it applies across the board. If from the boardroom to the break room, everybody gets that, then when I answer the phone at the lowest level of that organization, I answer the phone and a client has a question and I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure. If I don't get what you just said, then what am I doing? I'm looking for my boss and asking them. And if they're not comfortable, what are they doing? They're turning to their boss. And it will go up a level of an organization until someone's comfortable enough to say, do this, and then it works its way all the way back down. How much did that just cost that organization? Not only in the time spent for the client waiting, because that could be minutes, hours, days, weeks, depending on the organization and the question. But if I understand the brand, if I understand what's expected and they tell me, I pretty much know what to say. And if the expectation is, you know what, do what you think is best, given what you know, and you're not going to be punished for making a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. Isn't that a whole different culture as well? I'm not concerned that I may tell them wrong. I'm doing what I genuinely think is the best. Do this. I'm taking care of the client. I'm hitting that bar. There could be another way of doing it. And Troy, you as my manager, you may come in later and go, hey, love what you decided. Did you think about this? It didn't come to me. Well, next time it will. That's the learning process, right? We still give them kudos when we pump them up. Does that employee feel great? Absolutely. But what's typically happening? How did you make that? Why didn't you ask? And then what are they going to do next time? I think I know what I'm doing, but I'm going to ask Troy. Great point.
Exactly.
All right, Bill has his hand raised, Shawn.
Oh, I do. That's right.
See, don't look for that.
No problem. I forgot I'd even clicked on that. I was going to say that it's very thought-provoking, and I'm absorbing a lot of fantastic comments and thinking about how to protect and retain top performers as a business leader. One of those key things you mentioned, Shawn, tremendously powerful. Listen what are causing people to feel like they're shoved backward or impeded in what they're doing, and actually do something about it. I think that's very powerful. And anytime I've fallen back on that in my personal experience, it's tremendously powerful to reinvigorate people's attitude and approach to engaging the business. But the other rule of squares you mentioned, to me, that's very intriguing and thought-provoking to think about. How do you take an organization and make it a more attractive environment, more attractive culture, and create the opportunity for more tugs to energize the population. And just looking at it a little bit, I guess, mathematically, if you can find ways as a leader to break down projects to smaller projects and empower groups, for instance, instead of a team of 100 people trying to accomplish a project, where you have 10 people who are leaders of the group and really engaged in the project, you can break that down into 25 projects with 4 people each. Then you could potentially have 50 people making big contributions to the project. So that's kind of the extremes, but to the extent a manager can identify how to empower more employees by breaking projects down and empowering smaller groups to have an impact, I see that perhaps that could be very powerful in reinvigorating a company's culture and having more people engaged and having more people find those tugs that keep them engaged, keep them happy, and potentially retain them. So I invite others to comment on whether or not you see that as a very valuable approach.
I think the big word used was empowerment, right? That's huge, right? I put a quote in there, decision making is easy when you're crystal clear in your core values. Like, decision making is empowerment, giving people the ability to go and break it down into smaller chunks and not have to ask for permission. And that's, you can feel like you're running your own business. You've set your own destiny. You've forged a path. You've made a decision, and that culture that the topic we're talking about, those values. Your culture is a byproduct of those core values. So if you're crystal clear, and it doesn't matter, like, you could have a very noble cause as a nonprofit, and your mission is to help one more person overcome financial ruin every day, or it could be profit at all costs, right? Two extremes. One I agree with, the other one I don't, but it doesn't matter whether I agree. That profit at all costs, if that's clear, then I'm going to make a decision that's consistent with my organization. Profit at all costs. As long as I run that conscious thought through my head and say, well, our value is profit at all costs. Is it profitable? Yes, I made the right decision. On the other side, am I going to help someone, come out of financial ruin, one more person every day? If I run that if that value is clear, if that part of my culture is clear, and I run the conscious thought through my head, am I empowering an individual to achieve financial success or come out of financial ruin? And I answer that, then I've made the right decision. It's that empowerment. It's decision making. It's making that decision point lower and lower and lower in the organization. And I think, to your point, breaking down those pieces into smaller chunks. It's not everything has to be a program. Not everything has to be a massive endeavor. It's just small decisions that happen every single day, and it is extremely powerful, regardless of what that value or that culture is.
I saw Cortland lean in and raise his hand.
I'm enjoying the conversation, because one of the things that I continue to see, especially in big organizations and even ours now, is that folks continue to modify the original culture. So in other words, as you move down the chain of command, you see new interpretations of what the culture requirements are. And Shawn, I think that may be reflective of the results that you're seeing. And part of the reason why a lot of folks are leaving is because of the fact that as you move down that chain of command, you get further and further away from the heart of the business, as they say, or the vision of the business. And I guess case in point is going to be the major change with Johnson & Johnson. And I'm going to use them as my prime example here, where back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and mid 90s, quality was their brand. And today it's all about profit. They don't care about the individual taking or consuming their products. It's all about making money. And that's part of the reason why J&J has had a severe suffering in the industry, because of their tremendous change from being a quality organization to being a bean counter. Thanks.
I think you're 100% right. And there's someone said it, and I don't know who. I always like to give credit to where I hear the quote, but the least acceptable behavior that you accept as a leader becomes your culture. So you're right. As it drops down to whatever level, it starts getting further and further away from the vision or the brand or the words on the wall. That's what people point to, and that's what they use. Just what Dennis said, right? If I understand crystal clear, I'm going to make one decision. If I think it's another, I'm going to make a different decision. And I think that's what we see happening all around us.
And that tone is set at the top. There's a, I don't know.
I'm just about to say that, Dennis, the tone has to come from the top, because if it's toxic at the top, then it's going to permeate all the way down.
There's a great IBM story where, the culture in IBM prior to Lou Gerstner was, if you didn't deliver to your numbers, you were fired. That was it, especially at the executive levels. And when Lou came in, the long story, or the short story is, there was a particular executive assistant that was charged with a very visible high revenue deal that, quite frankly, he screwed up and ended up making the newspaper, lost millions and millions of dollars, and it was very public. And so the previous culture dictated that EA come into the office, fall on his sword, and say, sir, I'll have my desk cleared out by the end of the day. And Lou looked at him after he went through the whole conversation and the previous culture being, I need to come and repent. I need to do my Hail Marys and fall on my sword and tell you how wrong I was. And then I pack my desk and go. Like, that was the expected behavior. That was the culture. And Lou looked at him and said, fire you? Why would I fire you? I just invested $30 million in your education. You're not going to make that mistake again, are you? No, then you're staying. No one's getting this experience, right? That instantly changed the culture of the C-suite. It went from, we made a mistake, be afraid, be very afraid, and be careful, to look, we're in this together. And it starts right at the top, and it can change very, very quickly, for the positive or for the negative.
Absolutely correct. And think about how many people went through that organization with the other way, it being the other way. How many good, competent people left, and how many deals did they miss because people were so tightly wound to not make a mistake that they weren't willing to gamble to help a client or earn a client or help an employee. That's pretty sad.
You guys are all so orderly today, raising your hand. You're raising your hand. Go ahead, Kathy.
Try to be polite. So I have employees. I have a team of caregivers, and I am competing with every other agency that does what I do to hire good talent and skill. I'm also competing with nursing homes, home health, hospice. They also get offered private positions from individuals. So I have a lot of competition for employees. I have much less competition for clients. So I've had to come up with a way both to entice people to stay with me, even when I may not have something for them immediately, at least keep me on your radar and keep some availability for me. And also, just maintain the culture that I want to create. So there's two things I've been having to balance. And a couple thoughts I have is that when you have someone that you've hired and they can't seem to pick up the culture, that does not get better over time. And I heard a saying the other day that hit me like a slap in the face, but this was a gentleman who's been in business for ages. And he said, well, we have a saying, it's easier to raise a child than to resurrect the dead. And sometimes I've noticed it's easier with some of those employees that are just never going to subscribe to the culture to just kind of let them stop having hours and go back to the drawing board and rehire and retrain, go through orientation and see who actually is going to be on board with what we do. And what I have found is that when I strongly present the culture that I have and the advocacy that I will not only provide for the client, but also for my employee, and what the kind of environment I'm going to put them into and the protection I will give to them, which is Something I do tell them during the very first interview, if I know I've got talent on the line, I will tell them like, look, I will go to bat for you. I will find you the best clients I can. And if anything happens, I will protect you. I have your back. And I will never put you in a situation that is unsafe. I put that out there. I told them exactly how we do things procedurally. And I have found that people have told me, you know what? I'm going to wait until you bring me something because I don't feel safe working for other people. I have been put into some ugly situations, so I'm going to wait for you. And so those are the people that I am scrambling to find the best for the most hours because they've already stated up front their loyalty and you can feel it. And yeah, so what I've actually this year decided I would revamp my own culture again and make the orientation thicker and make it, something a little more significant. And it's already making a difference in the employees that I've hired this year. They feel more supported and they understand. Like I have confidence in their ability to make decisions without consulting me. And so my phone is not blowing up all the time. What do I do about this? What do I do? No, they know what we do and what we stand for. And so I can't tell you how wonderful it is to set that up front. But yeah, some people are just not going to get it. And if you're not going to get it, you don't belong on the team because you're right. The worst decision that you accept sets the tone. Because once you let that go, it's not going to get better. It never gets better with employees or with clients. If you put in that wiggle room that is outside of the culture, you'll never get it back.
Well, kudos to you for recognizing that. And I'll say this, every employer is in the same situation you are. They just don't notice it, right? Every employee is a customer. And if they would look at it that way, how much different would they treat them? So you're kind of forced to by your structure. They are your client. How do I attract them and keep them happy? And then you've got another client that they're going to serve. How do you maintain that culture across all of that? Kudos to you for figuring that out and instilling that. Because I think in your business, in every business is important. In your business, it's critical because it is such a care business, such a hand-on business. It's such a important, business. I'll tell you, one of the most eye-opening things I've had to do in recent years is look at a care place for my mom for a period of time, not permanent, just a couple months, right? Rehab deal. Oh my gosh. It's scary what's out there and what passes is that. So you're right. And congratulations. That's a great story. And one I'll be using again. As I can see many other people are going, yep, I will too.
Kristen.
I was like, okay, everybody else is raising their hand. I'm going to do it the physical way. But just like that last point that Kathy said too, it's about putting those expectations out there. We need to do that as business owners as well. As if I start answering the phone at 8 o'clock at night, then I'm telling them that this is okay for them to call me at 8 o'clock at night. And I learned that pretty quickly earlier on is I'm not responding to emails and I don't have email on my phone. I do that by choice because I figure we're already tied to, I've got 3 monitors here and a cell phone, so I don't need to be on 24/7 and I refuse to. I might send a text, but it's not going to hit until 9 o'clock in the morning because I don't want to create that atmosphere that it is okay to call me 24/7 because those are not my hours. So.
Setting expectations is so important. And I've always told you, because it's hard not to give people your cell phone, right? Call me anytime you want. If I can answer, I will. If not, leave a voicemail. I'll answer it when I can. And I'm very clear on email. I check email very first thing in the morning before I emphasize something else, at lunch and at the end of the day, not all day. So if you can't wait 2 or 3 hours, you better call me. Right. And I think that's more than adequate to respond to somebody.
Yeah, but don't email me, text me, and call me just because you haven't heard from me.
But if I could add on, but here's how you get away with it though, Kristen. Everybody that I've ever talked to who's worked with you, us included, we don't feel the need to ever reach out to you after hours because your ethic, your culture, what you've created, I feel like it's instantaneous. Nobody ever has to follow up with you. So you can establish those boundaries because your culture and your values are consistent with what you want to deliver. And so you set those boundaries, but I don't know that anyone ever feel as though they needed to call you at 8 p.m. unless they were the type of customer or the type of client or the type of partner that you wouldn't want to do business with in the first place, right? So you're able to establish those boundaries because you're true to those values, and the culture that you've created around yourself, your clients, your partners is consistent. You would think that you are working 24 hours a day because it always gets done and it feels instantaneous. So
yeah, and it hasn't always been that way. You know, when I first started, I was working 7 days, you know, every day, every night, you know, because I was starting my business and, you know, in a new town, et cetera, et cetera. But when I started getting those calls, I was like, why are you answering these? I need to, you know, I had to wean them off. You know, it's like, okay, I may be working. So instead of sending it at 9 o'clock at night, because I was working, I would hit the option to send the next day. So I've got it off my plate, it's done, but they don't know that it happened at 9 o'clock at night. So sometimes, you know, but I have filtered out a lot of those types of clients. So I usually don't have that problem anymore, but yes, thank you.
And I've made the offer. I've told you, I couldn't tell you how many people, hundreds, if not thousands. And I've once gotten a phone call late at night and they were shocked that I answered, but I told them, hey, if I can answer, I will, you know, like, but it was a true emergency, right? But never. So I think Dennis is right. The expectations we set are really important. Well, I know we're getting close to it. Yes, Greg. You're muted.
As in saying, you know, what's the saying? 10% of your clients take up 90% of your time. And, you know, sometimes those 10% aren't worth working with.
It's important to reevaluate and always look at where it's coming from. That's why that old 80-20 rule starts to apply places, right? And understanding what we're dealing with. It's the same thing with employees, right? Are they really worth being here? Are they dragging our culture down? Is this behavior I don't need to be putting up with? And are they the rotten apple in the barrel? If they can't be changed, then let's move on.
Yeah, and Karen, you make a great point in the chat window about the people you hang around with, right? This includes your friends, your culture, right? And the people that you're hanging around with. Do you want to weigh in there, Karen? I know we're close. Oh, okay. She's like, no, I'd already wrapped up. Now you're on mute. We're almost there. Now we got it.
There you go.
I don't speak today. I'm so sorry. Hello, everyone. The reason I brought that up because this past weekend I was at a conference and not thinking about the time, I sent a text message out at 10 o'clock because I really didn't want to speak to this person. Well, guess what? They called me and I went ahead and accepted the call because by me not paying attention and sent that text message, I went ahead. I told the person, I said, okay, I gotta go. I'm in a training and I gotta go get some rest. This person was calling me during the daytime while I'm at that training. And of course, for some reason, I had my volume on my phone down on low, but it still rang out loud. And I got really pissed at this person. And I'm sorry that I did, but it was just a point of, I already told you I was in a training. So why are you calling me during the day? So I had to send it back out and I did yell in caps saying, I told you I was in a training. Don't call me no more. You know, so yeah, you do have to remind your friends too of your same culture and values when you're building your business too. So
that's great.
Absolutely. And Cortland, you're right. You know, it depends on what kind of organization you have. Sometimes you do have to answer the phone, right? You do, but it's part of your culture and it's what you build. And if you need to answer the phone, you do. And if you don't, then you can build those boundaries around what that looks like. So Shawn, I'm going to take the reins back from you because we've got about 4 minutes left. One of the things that we did not do is share contact information in the chat window. I'm sorry that I did not mention that ahead of time. If there's somebody here that you would like to connect with, or if you'd like to be connected with, please put your contact information in the chat window. If you would like to save the chat, there's 3 dots down in the bottom right-hand corner. If you click on those, it will allow you to save the chat to your desktop so you can go back to it later and grab that contact information and connect with each other. Another great way to connect with each other is through LinkedIn. And by the way, our Texas Leadership Network has a LinkedIn page. We would love for you to go out there and follow it. Just do a search for Texas Leadership Network and it will pop up. We'd love to have you follow us out there and share it with other folks that might benefit from the information that we have here. We appreciate all of you, most of you showing up every single month. If this is your first time, we hope that you will come back next month. It works the same way every single month. We have one of our coaches will facilitate a topic, and then we'll have a discussion on it. And if somebody really needs some assistance or help or has a challenge, then we can collaborate on that as well. We've done that in several sessions. So we'd love for you all to come back. You get the most out of it if you do come back, because we continue this conversation and really help each other grow as people and as business owners and as business leaders. Any parting words? Did I miss anybody that wanted to weigh in? I know Camila, you didn't didn't weigh in today. If you would like to do that, we have a couple of minutes left, or if you were here to observe, that's okay too.
No, for me, it's good. Listen, the opinions. In these times, I don't have other perspective. I estoy muy agradecida y very appreciate that you organize this event. I think it's good. I think it's necessary.
Mil gracias.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And looking at the time, everybody gets a couple of minutes back. I know some of you may have back-to-back Zoom meetings. We look forward to seeing you all next month. It is always the second Thursday of every month. We promise to bring you an amazing topic again and have a great conversation. You'll have an amazing afternoon and a wonderful Easter weekend. And we'll see you next month. Have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye,
all.
Portland.
Great job, Shawn.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
excellent.
Glad y'all enjoyed it.
Take care, Cortland.